Welcome to Talking Giants presented by DraftKings. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick, doing a mini camp roundup. We got six things to talk about. We'll do Giant stories too. Justin, how are you?
Roundup, wrap up. I prefer the word wrap up. I'm the producer, therefore that's the word that's going in the title. Bobby Skinner, I'm good. Kind of ended I ended a job recently, and I will hopefully be going on to a new job or multiple jobs. And I decided to go to a football field and absolutely just destroy a tackling dummy. And
that was pretty good too.
I was compared to Blake Martinez, which I already do look like Blake Martinez, which the Dave Gettleman account, our not the Dave Gettleman account, the Dave Gettleman, good friend of the program. He morphed my face on top of Blake Martinez's face already, and I somehow made Blake Martinez look about 10 years older than he actually is.
Well, he's only like 27 years old, so it's not a huge age difference. So you're good.
I added wrinkles to his face. I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah.
How are you?
Happens. I'm hurt, dog. Don't ask me if I'm all right.
Oh, okay.
I'm podcasting while injured. I bruised my ribs.
While playing basketball?
Yes.
You got an elbow?
So here's the thing. I'm 6'7".
Yeah.
My brother is not. We naturally we literally split the hoop. It's at his house. So he paid $140. I paid $100. Since it's at his house. So we play against each other a lot. Basically our routine is we'll go out, shoot around, we'll do a free throw contest. We'll play a game called Lazy 21, where it's, because there's only two people, it's you shoot where the second bounces off the other person's miss. And then we play one-on-one, and he fouls the crap out of me when we play one-on-one because he's 6 inches shorter than me.
Bad guy.
And I'm dribbling with my left hand, and I got my right hand up as kind of as a guard, and he just basically hockey checks me. And I punched myself in the ribs, man, and immediately it hurt. But it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Last time I bruised my ribs, I couldn't breathe. It hurt to breathe. This time it just hurts to move certain ways. So
you're playing through the pain. Good for you.
Oh, I finished the game. I finished with a layup. I went to the right because I didn't want to leave my ribs exposed.
Yeah.
And then the game winner, he checked it, and I shot a J right there and it went in. Which
you
is
the shot Apollo.
I practiced the most. So
I think it's Apollo and Rocky too. It's look at the announcer's look at Apollo. He's covering those ribs. It could be Rocky 1 or Rocky 2. I'm sorry for getting the reference wrong.
So minicamp.
First of all, very different from last year. First of all, you killed social media, so congratulations to you. But fun to just follow the drops that came from all these press conferences. Because that's the thing that was different from last year.
Yeah, we did. That's last year's offseason sucked. It was very deflating last year's offseason, amid the pandemic. We just didn't get anything. They had some virtual meetings. There was nothing. So it's even looking at clips and highlights and even looking at the pictures and going through all the it was fun. This was a fun week. I love these type of things. I really do value these. You get these interviews, it's like the first day of the new season, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's what these are like. Training camp is the real deal, but this is it's like orientation to the 2021 season, where it's we've totally moved on from the draft. Rookie camp's over, and it's okay, this is our team, 90 guys here, new coaching staff. Don't expect any type of changes in between now and when the season starts, So I thoroughly enjoyed covering it this week.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun getting everybody back together, especially this being year 2 of Joe Judge. And we can maybe talk about this with some specific players just getting comfortable with scheme and schematic, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because Patrick Graham is kind of more fun than Jason Garrett, if we're being real. And that's not really a dig towards anybody, just Patrick Graham is more fun. But seeing everybody here year 2 and the general excitement that was around the team to kind of end the year and seeing everybody back, and it's yeah, we kind of believe what we're doing. And we haven't had that. We just flat out, even when we were good in 2016, there's a flat out belief in what's going on in the building. And you can kind of see it personified in, these corny press conferences that usually you can't get a lot out of anyway. But at least I feel like we're feeling that kind of energy, which is fun.
Yeah, everyone's more comfortable. It's year 2 in the system. And there's expectations of this team to win.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more fun. And I think that really hit me this week. It's hey, The expectations are the win. Like 10 wins, our guys, the New York Giants rush guys, they patented the slogan, 10 wins the floor. And like that is the expectation for
I
this
love
New
that.
York Giants. 10 wins the floor. But let's get into what we got out of this minicamp. And first of all, the preseason schedule dropped, the dates and times, which we can go through that. But with that, the Giants will be doing joint practices with the Browns and the Patriots. Both will be on the road, even though the Giants game is at home, which that is going to be fun. We didn't have that with the Pat Shurmur era. Did McAdoo do those? I don't remember.
Did Pat Shurmur do it with the Bengals one year?
I don't remember.
Or was that McAdoo?
I wasn't. Well, no, because I don't think we play. I don't know. But anyways, regardless, we'll be doing those joint practices and go through the preseason schedule. The first one is Saturday at 7:30 versus the Jets, the MetLife Bowl, which that's always just a fun game. The MetLife
Saturday
Bowl.
night.
It's Saturday night. Sunday. Now our next two, our week 2 and week 3 preseason games, only 3 games this year, are both Sundays. The second one on August 22nd is at the Browns at 1:00. A 1:00 Sunday preseason game.
Awesome.
I think I love it, but I also, part of me would kind of like, Sunday, like we're trying to enjoy our final Sundays before the season starts.
No, it'll be a good warm up. I think the next, read the third preseason game and then I'll give my thoughts.
And then the third one is versus the Patriots at 6:00 on a Sunday. And then they'll be practicing in New England before that, even though that one's in New Jersey. But without the fourth preseason game, you still have 2 weeks from the end of that game to the start of the regular season, where in past years it was last preseason game, next week is the regular season.
Oh, it's going to suck. That week is going to suck.
It's cut week.
No, but that week, the at least the weekend after the third preseason game is going to suck.
It's like a bye week. It's like a bye. It's like enjoy this weekend. Get ready for, like cut day is that Saturday. Get ready for the, like this is your last Sunday for 4 months, 5 months really.
Yeah, 5, because we're gonna end it in November. We're gonna end it in February, right? We'll see what the vibe is like during that little bye week. But I like how we're having the Sunday games, because at least for us, Bobby Skinner, it's good preparation for us. Like, let's get back into the Sunday flow. Sunday at 6:00 will sort of be like a Sunday at 4:00. That'll be a good test for week 1. And then just having a good Sunday 1:00 game, week 2 against the Bengals. That I think we're going to judge. We're judging and we're estimating that that's going to be the game that the starters play the most. So that'll be really good training for us to get going.
Yeah.
Get the pod out by Monday. Get some analysis out by Monday. So I think it'll be a good warm up for us. How everybody else feels, I don't know.
Yeah, but Thursday night, like that Thursday night feels like a preseason too, and we kind of get robbed of that a little bit. But let's talk about the joint practices. They're going to be doing them versus Cleveland and with New England. Like I said, both will be at the opposing's practice facilities. I love it. It brings you competition where you're not going against the same guys. Like Andrew Thomas, his best preparation for the regular season will be versus the Browns in practice, whereas not just adding the preseason games helps, but he's going from his best pass rusher that he's probably going to go up against being, Lorenzo Carter, to Myles Garrett, who's, in top 5 for defensive player of the year every single year. And it kind of gives you like that scout team feel, while also going up against competent players, where it's R1s versus their ones and R2s versus their twos, where in the, regular season, it's ones versus, 2s and a halves, and vice versa. So it also kind of gives them a break. Like Judge actually brought that up. He's like, kind of gives the guys a little bit of rest, that where it's like, it's not always our offense versus their defense. It's like our offense versus their defense. And then they take a rest while the opposite side of the ball goes on. But I love it. It breeds competition. As injuries happen in training camp every year, so it's not like I don't think these breed any more injuries. Obviously, you don't want to see any fights. I know they can be fun to talk about, but it does ruin a day of practice if you have a fight like Washington and Houston had. But I like it.
Here's my first question. I mean, obviously the Judge to Patriots connection is understandable, but this isn't really something I looked into. Where does the Judge to Stefanski connection coming? Because I kind of love that there's a connection between those two coaches. So I don't know if it's something that's apparently obvious with like they've coached together at this school or whatever. Do you have any information on that?
They actually, send it. Nice, good job sending that to me. I know you're setting me up. They actually were high school teammates for very little when they were their freshman year, and then Judge transferred to another school. It says for family reasons, but I think it's because Kevin Stefanski won the starting QB job at the high school.
Oh, tough.
But we'll see. Hey, that's me just guessing. There's no definitive answer on that. But I bet you it has more to do through like coaching and making connections and than it necessarily does like, oh, like they're just so close from that 1 year they spent together in high school.
But I love how this is another coaching tree that somehow Joe Judge is connected to. I mean, if there's a brain in football right now that I would love Joe Judge to pick, or even just, Bobby, you talk about this all the time, you specifically. The NFL is a copycat league, right? And if you're not taking from other smart people who are successful in the NFL, especially on the offensive side of the ball, if you're not taking from them, you're kind of losing, right? Pat Shurmur did a little bit of that. I don't know if Jason Garrett did it, and I don't know if there was ever a time where we definitively picked it out last year that Jason Garrett ever did it. But if there's a team to pick it from, maybe not in the run game because their run game is so niche with the outside zone scheme, but in the passing game and how they run crossers and play action, they get Baker Mayfield out of the pocket, they get him away from the pocket, so he has a lot of time to throw. I mean, Baker Mayfield was the quarterback last year with the most amount of time to throw out of any quarterback in the National Football League, because I do think they ran that play action, they got him out of the pocket, so he was able to sit. So if there's any brain in the National Football League right now that I would like Joe Judge to pick, or even just to get a week of film against and to see how we stack up, it's the Cleveland Browns. And they also have a very good roster. Like,
yeah, I mean, they're like a favorite to challenge the Chiefs in the AFC, which I am very interested to see how the NFL adjusts to that Cleveland offense, because it is a very it's like, okay, like this is what they do. They have a very clear identity. They're not changing week to week.
Yep.
But that's not what Talking Giants is all about. So I'm excited about that. There's gonna be a ton of good competition in that, and like. What's crazy is you think about the offseason 2 years ago and how relevant it was. It seemed like every week, but also Odell. Like that's kind of got to be weird, Odell with a lot of his friends. Shep's his friend, Ingram's his friend, Saquon's like a lot of his friends. That's going to be kind of like a weird situation right there. Isn't it crazy that happens and it's like you don't really think about Odell for more than a few seconds? Where it's like 2 off seasons ago, man. It seemed like every week I was talking about Odell.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even 2 off seasons ago. You had a YouTube video during the regular season this year where you had a rant about Odell.
Yeah, but that was like the one time I talked about him all year.
Yeah.
Whereas like the year before, like it seemed like every week we were talking about Odell on the podcast because he wouldn't stop talking. So that's that'll be fun watching Odell. And we got robbed of that in the regular season.
Yeah. And we don't, also he's coming off the injury too, and maybe this can segue us into Barkley if you want to do that. 2 good radio segues by me. Look at me go. I don't know how much we're going to see Odell. And it's kind of similar to Barkley because they're coming from all these injuries.
Yeah. So let's transfer to Saquon. Let's transfer the power. Saquon Barkley.
Look at me.
He had his presser. And they were needling him, trying to get a timetable and finding out where he is injury-wise. And I'm sure this is kind of company line, but he would not give them anything. And they tried their hardest to get a status update. Are you ready for week 1? And he wouldn't give them a single thing. And I really do think they're going to try and ease him back in, which makes the Devontae Booker signing, make a little more sense, where it's like, hey, they're actually going to need to rely on this guy a little bit. Which, with a player like Saquon, do you pound it? Like, even if he was fully healthy, is it maybe like you don't pound him into the ground and he's like, you give him his, actually, no, I take that back. If he's fully healthy,
I have a take on it.
Possibly. Yeah. But long story short, they're going to ease Saquon back into this. And I don't think we're going to see very much of him at all in training camp.
Yeah, no. And for that reason, I don't think you should ground and pound him early on in the season. Oh, because he didn't have that much training camp. It's been a while since I've talked about it, but the fantasy football data shows, and when you're talking about running backs and overall performance, I think sometimes it's helpful. Production, when you're talking about production, I feel sometimes looking at the fantasy football data is kind of helpful. So a lot of that data shows that, 1 year removed from an ACL injury, or for in his case, he did like ACL, MCL, meniscus. I mean, he needed to wait almost like an entire week or week and a half for some swelling to come down so he actually can get surgery on it. But also, one of the good things is that I think he only needed surgery on the ACL, and the rest of everything else recovered naturally. But neither here nor there. The data shows that it's going to be this year that Barkley's production may be maybe decent, maybe all right. But next year, and ironically enough, it'll be his contract year. Next year, there is like a perfect recipe for Saquon Barkley to have like an insanely really good year. You saw it with Marcus Golden. Marcus Golden, 1 year removed from the ACL, had a bad year in Arizona. Comes to the Giants, the second year removed from the ACL. He gets involved in a little bit of a better system, but also he has a really insane year. Same thing happened with Dalvin Cook. He tore his ACL 1 year, came back, and then last year it was like, boom, he really, really hit. And a lot of the data shows that that's a common trend among those guys. So I'm all for like easing Saquon back in, because Bobby, I think it is way more important for the Giants to have Saquon Barkley week 18, week 17, week 18 than week 1, because I'm looking back at the explosive play data from last year. The first 8 games of the season, not a single run of 20 plus yards by a running back. Through the first half of the season, Bobby Skinner, half of the season last year, the first 8 games, there's not a single run of 20 plus yards by somebody not named Daniel Jones. And I would like to think with Saquon Barkley on the field, that happens at least in the first 2 quarters of the season. So we need him. We need him here for the second half of the season. I don't want to rush him back and get him hurt in the regular season, early in the regular season, so then he's like working his way back or working through something. We need him here, so there is no excuses for this Giants team this year.
Yeah, and because we really didn't get to see him at all last year, man, I really do think we forget how special Saquon, like, and I'm not, like, when I say we, I'm talking about myself. Like, sometimes I forget, like, how special he is. And then you look at things, it's like, oh, yeah, he had more receiving yards week 1 than our running backs had all year. Like no running back, not even our running backs combined for one game matched what he did in that week 1 matchup versus Steelers. And it wasn't like he had like some crazy receiving game, where he was super involved. He basically like took 2 catches and gained a ton of yards with them. You mentioned that stat with the explosive, the big runs. Week 1 of 2019, the first drive, what happened? Saquon for 60 yards. Remember versus Buffalo. If you want to give Pat Trimmer credit or anything, it's his opening drives.
Yes.
Remember that first drive versus Buffalo? We ran the ball every single play. It was like 6 yards, it was 6 carries, like 75 yards for a touchdown.
Like, oh crap, is it going to be this easy this year? That's
yeah. And I remember after week 1, the talking point, like, they need to run Saquon more. And then the first drive, they literally ran him every single play and they scored a touchdown. So you do forget how special he is. So like you said, you don't want to rush him back and lose him later on in the season because he's forcing it, like kind of like they did with with DJ, where he's overcompensating to protect his hamstring, and then he sprains his freaking ankle in the game, and it's like, this guy is like screwed right now. So
I would just rather,
when I say easing back in, I don't think that means 50-50 carries. I think that means more maybe like, I think easing Saquon back in still equals like 15 carries, right?
Oh yeah. And he averaged around 15 carries, 16. I mean, 15 carries is a lot of game. Like 15 carries per
game.
It's
a lot of carries. If you're winning, hopefully it's a little more.
Yeah, because I mean, he averaged 15 carries per game his rookie year, and he had an insane rookie year. Also, he got a lot of receptions too, and I don't think he's going to get that. Like, he's not going to get the same receiving work that he got his rookie year, because Daniel Jones is not the same type of quarterback as Eli Manning. But really, what it comes down to, short talking point for Saquon with me, it's more important that he's on the field week 17, week 18 than he is week 1, because I don't want to be looking back at this season and having John Mara, Dave Gettleman, Jason Garrett, Joe Judge talking to us at the end of the season. Well, we didn't have Saquon, and that kind of hurt. So let's have him, even if it's bringing him along nicely in the beginning so he's up to full speed. And if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. You can't control it, but let's not force it at least in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to hear from him. I mean, it was good to hear from really everybody
Yes.
besides the next guy we're going to talk about is Jason Garrett. You know the meme with Gordon Ramsay where it's like me talking to this person versus me. It's like, oh, you precious, and then it's like you donkey.
Mm-hmm.
That is the way I am with Jason Garrett and Patrick Graham. Where Patrick Graham, I'm like giggling. Ooh, that's a good answer. Wow, awesome stuff. Really like that. And Jason Garrett's just like, shut up, please. It's like, so he actually gave something like a good piece of information that I got from Jason Garrett. And it's something that we talked about. So it kind of confirms what our thoughts were, is that they looked at Daniel Jones 2019 and Jason Garrett specifically. He says this, and we heard that, Colin Cowherd had said something a couple months back where Garrett had relayed this to him, is they looked at the turnovers and like, we got to cut down the turnover. Like that was their main focus in 2020, which frustrates me because it's like, why couldn't we let Daniel Jones just get better at not turning the ball over on himself and still trying to keep an aggressive offense and cutting, like having some turnovers, but cutting them down. And that's the way they attacked 2020. And that kind of sucks, now. Hopefully this year they have to open it up a little more, but it does suck that they went from the 19th ranked offense to the 31st ranked offense. And you can bring up all the players, but the 2019 players weren't anything special either. And really the biggest difference was the way they attacked playing offense, where it's like, we got to be conservative, we got to be careful, which ended up being even a little more risky because it was like defenses were sitting on routes and realizing they didn't you have to cover their asses deep. And it didn't even really make Daniel Jones like that offense less turnovers, because the fumbles, he got hit more and just had the fumbles are all on Daniel Jones himself. And the interceptions, he had 10 and 14 games, which is better than actually the interceptions were different because Jones didn't have any passes tipped off of hands in 2019. So all of his interceptions were real deal interceptions where I've eight where we're like really on him, and one of them wasn't even I did the clip of his touchdowns and interceptions. It pisses me off they counted that one versus Washington where he throws off the back of the end zone and they counted the safety as in. That pissed me off. But anyways, he did get better at the interceptions type stuff. But it just sucks that we, on a year where our defense was ranked 9th, we had an offense that was ranked 31st. So please, Jason Garrett, open it freaking up this year.
Yeah, by wanting to rein in Daniel Jones a little bit in 2020, because that's basically what Jason Garrett said. We wanted to rein him in. We wanted to cut down the turnovers. By making the offense more conservative, it made it worse, and it arguably made it more prone to turnovers. So, I mean, I know you already just said that, but just to say it, I guess, in less words, which good for me, putting something in less words. He did. Now, I will say, this is where I will defend him a little bit. I don't really have a problem with him saying, like, heading into this year that we wanted to cut down on Daniel Jones's turnovers, because we were saying the same thing too. We were saying the same thing. Now, the way we
wanted it to be attacked is totally different, though.
Correct. We wanted it to be not at the expense of his eye of the tiger, like keep my eyes downfield and stand in the pocket, take a hit, which I'm glad
we wanted him to get better at not turning the ball over by getting to his check down quicker, not totally changing the offense and getting rid of all the good things that led to all those exciting touchdowns of 2019 and multiple 4-touchdown games, and being the only guy who threw a touchdown versus New England. So
obviously
it didn't
there's
work, so it's like you can say like, oh, like it flat out, the way they did it didn't work. And if they don't change it drastically this year, it's not going to work this year. It'll be better than last year because you have a lot better players. But, if they don't change the way they do things from pre-snap motion to their route combinations, it's not going to be a good offense no matter how good these players are.
Yeah. And so obviously, we have philosophical disagreements with Jason Garrett. But I didn't really have a problem with what he said, because it's like, yeah, that was a goal that everyone had for Daniel Jones heading into 2020, was reducing the turnovers. But then, obviously Jason Garrett isn't really going to say this during a press conference that, largely why the turnovers did happen kind of in the first place is because we have repetitive route concepts and our receivers can't get separation and Daniel Jones is constantly throwing in the tight windows. He obviously cannot say that and he won't say that. But I will say, the reason why we don't get a lot out of Jason Garrett is I feel a lot of great questions are asked to Pat Graham, or at least Pat Graham is very much open to talking about like, yeah, we're going to run more zone. We did run, or we're going to run a lot more man. We did run a lot more zone last year. So he's very open to talking about that. No, they don't ask Jason Garrett about like route concepts, wide receiver separation. And, he brought up the explosivity by himself. He did say that we need to be more explosive, which I'm glad that he just brought up, but it's like just stating the obvious. It does a bear shit in the woods. Not a lot of great questions are asked to Jason Garrett. So it's tough to get anything from him. I wish they were tougher on him.
He had the shortest press conference all week. Like it was like 5 minutes.
It's crazy how he's like, that's like the person that we
this in Dallas. Like I didn't watch Jason Garrett pressers in Dallas. How did
he hated it. He hated it. He 100% hated it. I think I don't want to say he has anxiety. But I remember reading somewhere that he just hated the media.
He's such a nice guy.
Who, me?
Jason Garrett.
Oh.
Like you could tell, like he's just a nice, like wholesome person, which is why the Mariners probably love him. Patrick Graham on the other side. By the way, congrats. Patrick Graham got skinny.
Oh yeah. We got to go on that.
As soon as I was like, oh boy, man, you got, and I saw him down at the Senior Bowl, and he was, pretty hefty guy. And I'm not throwing stones over here. I'm just saying. And he said it. If someone actually asked him about it, and he was like, yeah, he's like, I've never been heavier than I was at the end of the season. So, but he looks skinny, so good for him. Come play basketball with me, Coach Pat.
Your brother will break his ribs.
Yeah, I won't take shots at your ribs. He did say it was his dream job though, and that's why he turned down the Jets interview.
Yeah, but then like later he said, "Well, we're all gonna look for our own professional opportunities." Which I texted you before I listened to the full press conference, and then you texted back and you said, "Listen to the full comment." I thought I was legitimately going to ask you, and I thought we were going to have a conversation of, are people actually taking that seriously? And
well, now you can push back on that and say where he did say later, he's like, listen, it's natural to want to progress in your career, So like when he was asked if he would ever want to be a head coach, he basically said yes. Well, like, you get asked a yes, no question and you don't say no, it means yes, So like he does want to be a head coach eventually. But at the same time, he did turn down an interview with the Jets, which I think like that does mean something, it doesn't hurt to interview, and he did get he got his contract restructured, which we would assume is a pay raise. But the fact that he didn't take that interview, I don't care if it comes with a pay raise, is like, that does mean something. And people talk about how, hey, sometimes your first interview is just kind of understanding it. And then the next year is when you get that job.
That's what we thought Joe Judge's interview was going to be.
Yeah. Which is funny looking back, which, it's like, we can do all the research in the world. And it's like the one guy we didn't spend any time really researching was Joe Judge, and he gets the job. Pat Grant, like he does want to be a head coach, but it does mean something that they stayed here. And he said working with his friend Joe, and I do think that is a huge thing, is that him and Joe Judge, the shake and bake thing is real. They are like really good friends, from, just the way you see them interact, the way they work together, the fact that Patrick Graham was the only other coach to go down to the Senior Bowl. Jason Garrett didn't go. Dave Gettleman didn't even go to the Senior Bowl this year, but Patrick Graham was down there. And the fact that, he changed his license plate to Shake and Bake after our shirt, shout out us. Like, they are really good friends. And I do think Pat values that. And it probably a good reason why he left Miami from a similar role. I know Flores kind of took more of the reins, like play calling, but just being like I want to go, like Joe Judge, like him and Joe Judge are really good friends, and I do think he values that and being here with the Giants.
Yeah, and you're sensing it this year, and that's kind of like what I said at the beginning of the show. You're sensing it this year, and it's just fun. I mean, even the players, Jabril dropped the line. That's the magic. It's the power, the magic of Patrick Graham.
Both said the beauty of Patrick Graham.
The beauty of Patrick Graham,
like playing multiple safeties on the field and stuff.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about those two guys in a couple minutes. The other thing is, Now, this is something we all assume because of the way they attacked the offseason by adding Adoree Jackson and Aaron Robinson is, what we said last year is like, hey, they came out trying to play some man coverage, especially on third down. It did not work, and they went more to zone. But like, hey, they want to play man coverage. Like Patrick Graham basically said that without like blatantly saying it. He did say that we tried to do some more man stuff early in the year and then had to change up and play more zone. So like, get ready for that. Get ready for some third down blitzes with the addition of Adoree Jackson. Yep. I wouldn't even throw Aaron Robinson in there right now because he might not even get playing time this year or not substantial. I do think Darnay wins that job, but expect him to play more man coverage, and to be more aggressive and blitz and to trust that back end more than they did in 2020 when they had Isaac Yiadom, Ryan Lewis, and Corey Ballantyne playing that cornerback spot.
Yep. This is a secondary that is full of guys that force incompletions. So even if quarterbacks target them often, there are guys that all pretty much top the NFL. Logan Ryan was top 10 for like free safeties and safeties for passes deflected. Jabril Peppers, I think, was number 1 for strong safeties in the NFL and passes deflected. And he had his best year last year. In terms of passes deflected. Same thing with James Bradbury. He had a career best year in 2020 with passes deflected, forced incompletions. That's why I think he is recognized as one of the best corners in the National Football League. Because not only if he is targeted, I think it's kind of cool where he is targeted maybe a little bit, decent amount. It's not like Byron Jones where he's targeted twice a game and then that's it. He's targeted a decent amount, but then whenever the play goes to him, he's more likely than not to force that incompletion because he's not allowing a lot of separation. And Adoree Jackson, when he's healthy, when he's going right, he's the same type of deal. So I'm very proud of us. I'm giving us a pat on the back for a second because this was a take that we have had all offseason. And in terms of, we were even saying this before free agency. We were like, all dependent on how the Giants want to address cornerback 2, whether it's just staying pat with Yiadom and maybe promoting Julian Love, then it's like, great. Then we'll just rock and roll with the defense we had last year, bending but don't breaking. And, hopefully that works, but, that may not be sustainable. But I think Patrick Graham looked at it and said, listen, he said it, in order to be successful, have sustainable success on the defensive side of the ball, you do need to play man coverage and your man needs to beat your man. Offenses are going to be able to read through that zone defense and figure out the holes, especially now that there's one whole year of filming. So depending on how the Giants attack this offseason, that will be dependent on how Patrick Graham's scheme progresses or how it doesn't progress. Is it going to go back to what it was in Miami, where he was blitzing a ton, playing single high safety with man coverage, or is it going to continue to be the same where they're playing cover 3 and they're dropping 3 guys deep and they're preventing anything from getting behind them? So I'm very proud of us that we have been on top of that like all off season, and I'm very happy about it.
Also,
very happy for us.
Also, can you read the ad?
Yeah. So speaking of things that make us happy, Patrick Graham makes us happy. Jason Garrett makes me want to punch Bobby Skinner in the face. If you want to know what doesn't want to make me punch Bobby Skinner in the face, it's DraftKings Sportsbook. It's not only my favorite sportsbook, but also it's America's top-rated sportsbook. I love using DraftKings Sportsbook. It's easy to navigate, has plenty of instructions for new bettors, and nearly limitless ways to get in on all the action. My friends and family, they've been loving DraftKings Sportsbook, and I know you will too, and you're going to use promo code JOHNBOY when you sign up. So listen to this great offer. DraftKings Sportsbook is putting you courtside with a chance to turn $1 into $100 in site credits. That's right. Pick any basketball team that is still in contention, bet $1, and if that team wins, you win $100 in site credits. Don't forget, DraftKings Sportsbook offers great odds and promotions on baseball, hockey, so much more all week long. DraftKings Sportsbook is safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. You have 15 seconds to give me a thought on how in the world Derrick Rose was nominated for a first place MVP nomination.
I think it was like the fans or something did that. So
the fans?
I don't know. I didn't really look into it.
Usually,
the fans might get one vote or something.
The fans. Derrick Rose?
He was the next best player.
Not Julius Randle?
Did you watch the playoffs?
Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code JOHNBOY when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 in free credits. I do not understand how that happened. Bet on the basketball team of your choice to win their next game. And if they do, you will claim $100 in free credits. That's promo code JOHNBOY for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 years or older. New Jersey, Indiana, Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Wager paid out in site credits. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana 1-800-9 with it. Bobby Skinner, say something.
Let's go Nets. The shirt's too big. I got to shrink it. But it's actually nice fabric, so I don't know if it's going to shrink the way I want it to shrink.
It's a nice shirt.
I know. I love this shirt, but it's... See, what happened is I got the tall version of it, which, I usually don't, but it's like, oh, it has that option. And it's just too baggy. Which I miss the baggy days. Like when I was in middle school, it was very like you wear baggy clothes. Like that was... I like baggy clothes, but it's over now. Nets will be up 3-0 when you're listening to this podcast. They're up 2-0 while we're recording it. All right. Some other last little notes before we head off for the weekend. Logan Ryan, when people were asking who we wanted to interview, and this is why I said I think he would not be the greatest interview for Talking Giants, because he is Mr. Perfect. Every answer is Mr. Perfect. He's making jokes with the beat reporters. I mean, to call up Jason Sehorn and Shell Roll and Corey Webster to get tips from them, I mean, is awesome. And it's also the most like pander move to the Giants fan base of all time.
Especially Sehorn. To throw Sehorn in there.
It's like, I love that he does it, but it's just such a pander move. Like he is Mr. Perfect. Logan Ryan is like Mr. Perfect. And I know people are like, why are you saying it with that tone? It's just funny. Like this guy, every answer is like in depth. He's, making, some of y'all would have fell out. It was so hot out there, and you weren't even running around like making fun of the beat reporters. Which, by the way, Burton Burns passed out. Glad he's doing all right. He's kind of old. Glad he's doing good. But he's just Mr. Perfect. Like if we ever do interview him, which someone's like, why wouldn't you interview Logan Ryan? It's like, oh no, we'll definitely interview him. But it's like they asked what our like most favorite one would be.
That will be your first question.
My first question is like, what's the last thing that you did where it's like, man, that was kind of screwed up?
What was the last mistake that you made in your life?
Not even mistake. Like, what was the last thing you did where you're like, oh, that was kind of like scummy? Like, have you littered in the last year or anything? Like,
No, it's not. Can't see it.
And he has like a foundation for dogs and stuff.
Come on. That pulls up people's heartstrings.
I know he's Mr. Perfect, and I love it, but it's just funny.
That answer sounded like the personification of Joe Judge. It sounded like if you were to put Joe Judge's spirit inside of a player, because then he talked about
because Joe Judge is a little scummy too.
Like, no, Joe Judge, but he talks about like the history of this of the organization, or I almost said organization, like Odell Beckham Jr. says it.
Like, Judge has like a little scummy, and that's why I love Joe Judge so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm not saying Joe Judge threw batteries when he was in Philly. I'm just saying that he probably got amused by the batteries being thrown.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And that's like kind of where I land as a person. It's like, I'm not going to do that stuff. Like when Yankees fans were throwing baseballs on the field a couple months ago and everyone was like, this is a disgrace. It's like, am I going to be the guy that throws a baseball on the field? No. But I am going to laugh. Like, it is kind of funny to me, and I think Joe Judge falls into that same category. Which, speaking of which, Joe Judge he said that he's a big fan of the joint practices, and that's what I said he was the day before. So just you know what? If there was 8 things that he said that were hints that he listens, I think that would be like lowest on the totem pole. So
yeah, because I
think we're just having a little too much fun with it now, where it's like, oh my god, did Joe Judge breathe too? Does he listen to Talking Giants?
He breathed at the same time.
Whereas like we have some pretty good evidence, piled up, but like sometimes we might reach a little bit on it.
It was a reach, a little bit.
Yeah, and then people thought like I was saying Jordan Renan copied me.
You know what? When I first saw it, I had to do a double take. I'm like, oh, this is a quote from Joe Judge, so it doesn't matter who it's coming from. It just was tweeted out by Jordan Renan. But yeah, I could see where people got confused.
Yeah. Anyways, so that's it on Logan Ryan. Jabril Peppers, which at first I wanted to talk about this a little bit, and maybe less now, but he is in a contract year. They like him, but we've talked about, there could be a chance that they don't bring him back. Xavier McKinney is here. They signed Logan Ryan to that extension. There is a chance that Pep isn't extended, that they don't give him a new contract. And then his first interview of his contract year, he's wearing a CAA Sports, which is his agency. And that just can't be an accident. Right? That can't be an accident.
No, probably not. Trying to do whatever he can to promote himself. And I really don't blame him. And
no, of course not.
I think it has to be feasible to bring him back. He's not going to demand Landon Collins money. I would hope not.
I don't think any safety should ever demand it, let alone Landon Collins, who wasn't Jabril Peppers is so much better than Landon Collins. It's crazy.
Yeah, but still, Jabril Peppers never had a year where he was around defensive player of the year territory.
Landon Collins had a bunch of tackles, and then he had some interceptions fall in his lap, and they're like, is this the best defender in the league?
Yeah.
That's what happened with Landon Collins. He was a very good box safety, and he had there was 3 weeks in a row where he had interceptions fall in his lap. And it's is this guy Lawrence Taylor?
No, but Logan Ryan is year 1 into year 3 of the extension, and he's 31, 32 years old. There's probably some sort of out after year 2 for Logan Ryan, where if the Giants wanted to get out of it, they can. Maybe they eat a little dead cap. Let's hope he just plays all 3 years and we love him and he's great. But there's always some sort of out, I feel in a contract of the final year.
After the second year.
And so really, we haven't seen anything of Xavier McKinney yet, besides just a little bit of promise for the last couple, last final games. So maybe
that's what they're waiting for, to see
right.
what Xavier McKinney is.
Exactly. But also, if the league is trending towards having more secondary pieces on the field, and that's exactly what, Logan Ryan, Jabril Peppers, and Patrick Graham, that's what they were all. No, Patrick Graham said if he had a choice, he would put 11 defensive tackles out on the field. But I don't think that's true. I think he just said that to appease those guys. But all the secondary guys are yeah, we want more defensive backs on the field, and that's where the league is trending. So I've had some discussions with some listeners in the DMs, where some of them have been I think signing Ingram is a little bit more important than signing Peppers, and I'm just at a point where I kind of want to sign I'm at a point where I want to sign good football players. I want to stop letting good football players kind of walk out the door. And even though the good football players that we have kind of let walk out the door the last couple of years, it's kind of worked. I don't want to let a good football player walk out the door. Reward yourself for a good trade. Reward yourself for a good draft pick, and have this guy stay here and kind of stick around and be hopefully a Giant for life.
I'm just blown away you got Ingram more than Peppers takes.
I think it's because I think it's because of the position.
The people that message you, are they people I probably wouldn't like?
Correct.
Oh. Anyways, I'm different. All right.
I like them.
Hopefully Peppers stays.
What else do we have? I know we have one more final note that's a little bit more somber, but do we have any
Giant stories?
Giant stories. Boom.
Which, are we not playing the music on YouTube?
We're not playing the music on YouTube because I'm going to try some things when I'm fully editing the videos.
All right. Well,
for podcast apps.
Cale Garrett was at a Yankees and Red Sox game. How about that? Also, Cale Garrett was with Devontae Downs, Ryson John, and Sandra Platzkummer at Six Flags. All the worst players on the roster bonding. Matt Parrott was at a Rock the Block party in Rockaway, New York. Honestly, looked like a lot of fun. Cullen Gillespie went to the Belmont Stakes. Horse races. No! Was going to make a really mean joke, but it's I need to grow up and make past that. I was going to make someone is a horse joke. Aaron Robinson was hanging out in Central Park. Tate Crowder, Lorenzo Carter, and Ellerson Smith were at the Nets-Bucks game. No one made it to the next game because they don't play anymore. Alex Stockman was at a women's soccer game. I'm not sure who the teams were. Reggie Ragland also went to a Yankees game. Andrew Thomas found Bambi in his front yard. And this might be the most bizarre Giant story of all time. Danny Shelton was horseback riding. And that's Giant stories. How Danny Shelton, don't do that to that horse, man. You are too big to be on that horse. That ain't right. and I hate to be mean about it, but it's like Danny Shelton, man, like you ain't made for horses.
Did you see him? They showed him in some clips of.
Yeah, he's huge. I
Oh
love
my
him, dude. Like,
God.
he's the most underrated sign. Like no one's talking about it. He's the most underrated signing of the offseason. But
Is he
don't ride
75? Is
horses.
that his number? 75?
Yes,
Yeah, he's ginormous.
he's a mountain. I cannot wait to see like week one. It's like okay, let's see how things work out. I can't wait to see what Danny Shelton's impact is week one. Like he can be a beast for us. Like I'm very excited for him. But don't freaking ride horses, dude.
How much does he weigh? I have this up right here. He
It's
weighs
probably
about
like 380.
300 and let's just round it up to 350. 350
He
pounds.
weighs more than 350 pounds.
How much does
He weighs more than 350. Andrew
horse-
Thomas is like 330 pounds.
how much does a horse weigh?
Or no, 350.
So he's about so a horse can weigh up to 840 pounds to 2,200 pounds.
So he's half a horse. He's a big dude. Let's see.
We
Now,
love you, Danny Shelton.
This is all I love him too, but don't ride horses, dude. The baby deer that Andrew Thomas saw really did look like Bambi. Like you really don't see those baby deers where I was almost worried about Andrew Thomas' safety. It's like that mother is probably right around the corners is gonna
Just
kill
hoof
you.
him right in the back of the head.
Yeah. So you gotta be careful. Colin Gillespie's at Belmont. Do you get into horse racing at all? Like I used to watch the Kentucky Derby. Now it's on draft weekend now, so it's like I don't watch it. But I used to like watch the Kentucky Derby. Like the last big horse I remember like paying attention to was Smarty Jones.
No, a lot of my friends want to make their way down to Monmouth, and I've been saying, hey, I mean, there's even East Rutherford, Meadowlands too. So they want to make their way down there. It's one of those things where a lot of my friends are like, yeah, we need to do this, but they're probably never going to do it. So if they don't do it, then I won't get into it.
Thing. I'm sure it's a nice little event.
Yeah.
I've never been to Six Flags.
Never?
Well, we have all the theme parks down here, so it's like Six Flags is like the minor leagues.
Oh, it's the big major leagues in New Jersey. Exit 7, I want to say 7A off the New Jersey Turnpike.
Which is where they were, but it's like I have Universal Studios.
Yeah. Disney.
Islands of Adventure. Disney's even like the roller, like the SeaWorld roller coasters are pretty awesome.
That's not shut down?
No.
Oh, they just don't have animals there anymore.
They do, but
they don't do the shows.
The orcas are. It's a little. I haven't been since the orcas were shut down. I do remember commenting because remember like they decided they were going to shut down the shows because of the Blackfish movie and like all the PETA stuff.
PETA, yes.
PETA. What was forget his name. Sea World. I think his name was Nico.
See the World.
That was Tillicum.
Excuse me?
His name was Tillicum.
Okay.
And so the week they shut down the shows, which was like, January 1st, Tillicum died. So I remember like me and my friends thinking it's funny, like commenting on PETA afterwards and being like, he died of a broken heart. He loved to perform and you guys killed him.
True.
Which is just good, harmless fun. Like that's what the internet's like. That's the kind of fun you should have on the internet. It's saying that like Tillicum died of a broken heart. I never watched Blackfish because I just didn't want to see all that. Because I remember growing up like watching, like I love SeaWorld. I love going and watching the shows. So I get that there's a lot of abuse in it, but I was like, I just don't want to watch that,
I don't blame you.
Shamu was my guy. Like I was a big Shamu fan. Like, and that, like they got rid of the splash zone. Like that was, I mean, you would go to SeaWorld and you would go to the show and you would get soaked. So rest in peace, Tillicum. That's basically it. All right. So I hate doing this type of stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of rest in peace.
I do hate doing this stuff, but it wouldn't be right if we didn't mention it. John, Fassel passed away.
Jim.
Which is sad, like he was my, Jim Fassel was my first head coach, and it is very rare to have a New York head coach who got fired. Tom Coughlin technically wasn't fired, but he was. But he won 2 Super Bowls. For a guy who did go to Super Bowl, that didn't win a Super Bowl, get fired, and you just never heard anybody say anything bad about Fassel.
Nope.
You know, like I like you never hear like on Twitter where everybody's negative and people will nitpick stuff on basically every single person who's been a part of the Giants organization or whatever team, especially in New York. You just never heard anything bad said about Fassel, and his players seem to love him. You know, like I liked Fassel. You know, obviously I wasn't as aware when he was the coach, but he was the head coach when I first got into the Giants. So, you know, obviously, you know, the condolences to his family and everything. You know, it's obviously for us, it's not like a family member dying, but it is sad. And, you know, I did think about him a lot that day. Big Blue VCR did a pretty good job that day posting videos of that stuff. So I didn't think it'd be right if we did this show and didn't mention him.
Yeah, with doing Bleeding Blue, we actually have focused a lot on the 90s and early 2000s Giants, more than I thought that we would, like in our first year of, you know, rebranding that show. And we've talked a lot about Jim Fassel. You know, it's kind of crazy how the Giants franchise went from Parcells, you know, obviously Bill Parcells, Hall of Famer, you know, best coach in franchise history, to go from Ray Hanley, who was just a disaster, who I think everybody and I just forget about. And then you have Dan Reeves, who is just the ultimate disciplinarian. And I think the common thread of Parcells and Reeves is that those were two guys that were largely disciplinarians. And, you know, Fassel was kind of like the furthest thing from it. They lost the NFC Championship game, and he took out his team that he rented out a movie theater and celebrated that season. And he was very much always just like a player's guy. I mean, the fact that we heard some quotes from Kerry Collins, you know, saying, you know, I would not have had basically any kind of career if it wasn't for Jim Fassel and the kind of the care that he took to that. And the fact that it worked for both of them. You know, Fassel, it's the only job that it's only head coaching job that he ever had in the National Football League. And him and Kerry Collins worked together. You know, they worked together largely for that 12-win season that they had in 2000. And obviously I'm pushing my chips to the middle of the table where we are going to the playoffs. You know, that speech where even though the Giants were like 7-4 at that time, I didn't really feel like it was necessary for Jim Fassel to really say, I'm shoving my poker chips in the middle of the table. This team is going to the playoffs. Like they kind of were going to the playoffs, but you want to know what it worked. They went on a 5-game winning streak to end the regular season. And they obviously the 41-0 NFC Championship game against the Minnesota Vikings, shutting down that elite offense and also putting up 41 points at home was unbelievable. The Jason Sehorn tipped interception in that divisional game, unbelievable. And the fact that he won NFL Coach of the Year in 1997, his rookie season, was absolutely awesome. Giants were kind of like in a little bit of a dark time, especially with Ray Hanley and even with a little bit with Dan Reeves. You know, they were in the middle of like a quarterback turmoil, finding out who their next guy was going to be after Phil Simms, and Jim Fassel brought him out of like that dark time.
Yeah, that Super Bowl year was basically my first year as a Giants fan. You know, that's the first year where I was like, okay, I'm a Giants fan. Let me watch the Giants, you know. And so yeah, you know, we'll you know, it does think, you know, obviously the family is probably feeling it pretty hard. So anyways, we appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week. Hopefully we have 6 weeks of no breaking news. Like, can we make this next 6 weeks no breaking news? And what I mean by no breaking news, nobody get arrested in these next 6 weeks.
You know, I don't feel like scruffing the dust off of any criminal justice textbooks or.
By the way, I listened to our first DeAndre Baker episode last year.
Sure.
And we literally got everything right how that case went. Like it's kind of crazy. Like how like we even were like, honestly, like I was like, I can see this whole case being dropped. Like these people that he like are accusing him are anyways.
Go listen to it. How about that over the weekend? If you want more talking Giants, go back and
listen to the first 20 minutes of that episode where we talk about it. So
DeAndre Baker arrested. That's the name of the episode, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So we'll be back on Tuesday. Gonna try and get an interview. Not guaranteed, but we'll do that. And then we have, you know, the 2022 draft week, the week after that, and then we do our 4th of July mailbag. We make the most out of this 6 weeks. We don't just mail it in. So we appreciate you guys. We will see you next week. Until then, let's go